Hello. Welcome to episode 32 of the NAmen Podcast. We took a little bit of a break because final season and everyone's busy, and also the LCS has been through a bit of a time for the last few weeks. So, feeling motivated to maybe come on the podcast is a little bit more difficult as, the whole community sort of exploded over the last couple weeks. I'm Arsh. As always, I'm joined by Numiii.
Hello, I'm Numiii. If you're watching this on YouTube, which I highly recommend as well, since you see the video, and then Arsh makes fun of me moving my hands too much. I'm already like doing this right now. He's already like, please, if you're audio only, please go on the
Wax
YouTube
on,
stream.
wax
That's really
off.
funny. Yeah.
He is wax on, wax off right now.
But I actually have a new background. I know Arsh just mentioned we've been a bit busy because of finals and like whatever's going on, but I actually moved as of last week. So officially I am now moved in Los Angeles. I commuted for a month from where I lived to Los Angeles, which is an hour and a half drive. I'm very thankful that I do not have to do that anymore. But I've been moving, so I am officially now an LA esports girl, and I don't know how I feel about that nomenclature. But we're gonna move on, and I'm gonna have John introduce himself instead.
Hello, I'm John the Ho. I've been busy with school, or rather, not doing stuff for school. I have an essay due on Monday that
Busy
I haven't started on.
procrastinating. Very busy.
Yeah,
You need to
exactly,
understand.
exactly.
My
It's
schedule is full of procrastination.
senioritis is in full effect. I'm just ready to graduate in 2 to 3 weeks.
That's hype, though. Graduation. I remember
Being done with
graduating
I
high
school.
school.
love
That was pretty hype.
It's so fun too that like I'm out of college, right? I graduated a bit ago, but it's really nice seeing everyone's graduation photos and saying like how happy they are and how proud they are and like how
I,
proud they
I
both
never
are.
did grad
Just
photos. I'm not doing grad photos. I'm not walking. I do not
wait,
care.
what
You're
do
not
you
walking?
mean? What do you mean? You're not
I
Bro,
don't.
walking?
I don't
what do
want
you
to
mean you're not
walk.
walking?
Our chances not even gonna be
Literally,
there.
walking isn't for you, it's for everyone else around you and your
Yo, what
family.
about
You
you
My
and
don't
your
need
par-
your
family,
extended
bro?
circle.
my parents don't like. My parents are kind of like, oh, we'd like it, but like it's okay if you don't, and they don't mind because I'm like 150 miles away.
We were
Like
in
my
a
mom has
pandemic.
my mom has
We
work
are
that
still in a
day.
pandemic,
Like
Ish.
yeah,
We were in the pandemic for
my
3 years
mom
and people had
probably
online like
yeah,
graduation,
my
and
mom
you're
probably
gonna be
has
like,
work
I
that
don't know.
day. My dad doesn't care. My dad actually doesn't care. So like
That's wild, John.
I don't.
Well, good luck with your
Yeah,
graduation. Coming at a
You
really
know,
good time to enter the esports industry for you. Um,
I don't want to talk about that.
but
I'm
yeah,
just
okay.
gonna Photoshop a
So
graduation cap.
Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
let's
I'll do
just,
that.
let's get down to the weeds of it. Uh, as we all know, it's June 2nd, which means we just finished watching the second day of LCS Summer Split.
Woo!
Yeah, let's go. Oh
Banger,
my god.
banger.
Dig 2-0?
I got back home so
Crazy.
fast. It was 5 games, but somehow I'm back at 6 p.m. because
We
they
got
ended
like a
so
we got a
fast.
pentakill like first game today too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
no,
saw
it
that.
was
Don't
I
remember
saw
the
that
crazy.
pentakill.
Tomio got a pentakill. It was crazy.
Yeah, I would recommend
Oh,
that everyone watches those games. Okay, but seriously, um, the LCS didn't happen this week. Week one just got canceled. Week two got canceled. We have 2 weeks of LCS being postponed because Riot does not want to play Scab LCS to the shock of absolutely no one. um, so we're now in the situation where everyone is sort of in limbo because in their post where Riot announced that they'd be postponing the LCS, they said very specifically, hey, if negotiations don't wrap up in 2 weeks, if we cannot play week three of LCS, we will cancel the LCS Summer Split. And that sent the whole community into a tailspin. It led people questioning the LCSPA's like intentions. They're like, are they even working for the good of the players? Riot holds all the cards. We have to just like, get off of this walkout because we can't afford the Summer Split to be canceled. What were you guys' reactions when you saw this? Because I think it was new information when you guys heard, right?
like, as like a member, as working with FlyQuest, right? And maybe I speak on behalf of people who work in organizations. I'm sure a lot of orgs have content planned for week one and two. Obviously, we're starting a new summer. We have a lot of new players as well, and those launches have to be delayed.
Wait, Andrew, you're
So
lagging a lot. Just
am
give it
I?
a second.
I will figure this out.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
sure.
So I know what you're gonna talk about. Basically, Andrew was saying that when this got announced on the day of, uh so I was speaking to a lot of people like at Riot and also at orgs and stuff, trying to hear what was happening, because sort of it was kind of known that like, okay, something's happening today. It was Tuesday. And everyone's like, okay, something's definitely happening because Memorial Day's over. We know Riot's meeting about this. We don't know what the actual answer is. And weirdly, I found out before people at orgs did what the decision was. So I'm still talking to people at orgs who are like in limbo. They're like planning day one's FanFest and oh wow. And just going to grab an Ethernet cable and route it all the way over to her PC. You guys can watch this while I explain. But basically, what happened was that planning was underway with the assumption that they would just plan for Scab LCS. So all these teams were still trying to figure out. I knew a couple of Scab rosters that were pretty insane. And those were like going forward, right? These are moving forward this week because their only option was to play with Scabs because the players would not be there. So the teams were sort of found out late, like, oh shit, like we're actually not playing. LCS is delayed by 2 weeks, and now we're just waiting, right? And Angie, I think your connection's a little bit better now, so you can kind of clarify like how that was, like hearing about this, changing all your plans, FY.
Yeah, so I found my Ethernet cable, so maybe I'm not lagging this time.
Sound a lot
But I
clearer.
can say like as a organization, right? Like I speak probably for orgs. A lot of orgs have content centered around week one. Obviously Jersey or Ross. Actually, now I think about it, only 2 LCS orgs have announced their full roster, like officially. Now
Wait,
that I'm thinking about
that can't be true.
it, right? Like,
There's a
TSM
bunch of
has.
teams that didn't change anything.
yeah, but like the initial announcement, like a tweet or like a video, I
You
No,
don't
no,
do
think
no.
a
that
lot
between
of
Who
spring and
else?
summer.
do
Wait,
you? I
EG,
don't know.
I'm hearing sources are telling me, Charlie in Twitch chat is telling me that EG hasn't announced their roster at all. Which is that true?
Oh no, they have not. They have not. They have not. I know they haven't.
Yeah, they
That's
have not.
crazy.
The only
Dude,
thing I have is
they were
obviously they
playing
have
it
it
close to the
out.
wire, man.
So
They've been focused all on
obviously, like
Valorant.
obviously a lot of content is being focused on week one, and obviously that stuff has to be pushed, right? So I can say that like FlyQuest has a lot of content. Our stuff is currently on hold, obviously. But I will say like my initial reaction is like if Riot needs more time for negotiations and stuff, like so be it, right? Like as someone who works for an org, like I'm just gonna wait it out and see. Um, but
Well,
like
I
as a
think
fan,
the main thing was like people thought that Riot. So their post kind of had this weird tone, and John, you can kind of maybe speak to this more.
Yeah.
Like, because I have a little bit more information like on the back end, which I think you were not like really looking out for, so you don't really know about that. I think, which might help like explain like how that post read to you. Like the vibes of it, I think I agree were really weird. So if you want to talk about the vibes of the post and why people thought Riot was very aggro in that.
Yeah, I mean to me the vibes are really weird just cuz like if you look at like how they worded it, they go like first and foremost we support players, then they kind of go over every like demand of LCSPA, basically explain why they're saying no to all of them, and then at the end say we want LCS to happen. But if it doesn't happen in 2 weeks, it gets canceled. So like it's kind of like a whole vibe of like
Yeah, it was
listen
almost
to what we say,
it was like a
like
mafia thing. Like
yeah.
listen, I'd love to let LCS happen, but that's up to you.
Yeah, exactly. It was like a whole like, yeah, no, I'm totally on your side. I'm totally on your side. But like, do this. Otherwise,
But
like,
yeah, you
you're not going
must
to
follow
Worlds.
what I'm saying, or there will be
Yeah.
problems. Yeah. So that article for sure, really weird vibes. And I think a lot of the community reaction was like, wow, the LCSPA's demands just all got denied. What is there even to negotiate on? I think there's like a little disconnect. I don't want to be like making assumptions. Again, I don't. So this part is not from the LCSPA. I have not talked to them about anything because they're being very cagey. They're talking about their own stuff internally, which I'm not a player, so I don't know. But I will say that if you thought that those demands were everything that the LCSPA actually wanted and like that was it, there's a lot of problems, right? First of all, before you go into a negotiation, they always say the best rule is to post online everything you want and be very clear. You want to always go into a negotiation with no cards in your hands. Like, I think it's pretty obvious to anyone who like understands the space that like almost none of those demands were reasonable in the first place, right? Like guaranteeing minimum contracts to anyone who wins the LCS, stuff like that is never going to be granted. So it wasn't really that surprising that Riot didn't accept any of those. The conclusion of this was never going to be, even if like Riot was really willing to negotiate, they were never going to grant almost any of those. The money they were asking per NACL team was way too much. And the way they were going about their changes were obviously like these are demands designed for paper but not actually for negotiations. But what Riot was doing, in my opinion, like from hearing about how their meeting went internally and all that stuff, like this is just a negotiation tactic, right? And that kind of got proved today because the dive got canceled. There was supposed to be a dive released, I think today or tomorrow, with NACL, who's the director of NALL Esports, I think, or maybe she might be the director of Global LoL Esports. I'm not sure. She's one of those two. And the dive was going to be with her because she wrote the blog post. It's her name on it. Global head of LoL Esports, and she was going to answer questions about how Riot's addressing the LCS situation. And they actually decided not to release it because they thought it would impact negotiations. And that kind of tips off that little thing of like, hey, the vibe that Riot isn't actually negotiating and isn't willing to give anything up cannot possibly be true because they are really on the back foot. Right? They are really trying to negotiate. And the LCSPA also, it was said, Mikhail Klementov, I believe, tweeted that like the LCSPA was no longer willing to interview because they're having really productive conversations in negotiations with Riot and they don't want to compromise that. And that's kind of where I expected this to go as well. I don't know if you guys thought this would be what would happen or if you were feeling a little more doomer or...
I probably expected something closer to this just because like I feel like because Riot wants LCS to happen. Like they
Yeah.
no LCS means Riot just loses because they have to pay all the staff still. They have to pay all the
talent.
production, all the
Yep.
talent, even if there's no show. So they're just
which means
if
they
there's
just
no
burn money.
LCS, yeah, they're just burning money otherwise. So
And
like
also you
Riot
burn
wants LCS,
sponsors,
players want LCS.
right? Like your sponsors are not going to keep working with you if you just cancel on them for half the year, right? They're going to be out. You're going to lose a lot of sponsors. And you're going to have a ton of bad PR, right? Like canceling the LCS is not an option. From what I heard, it was presented internally as like a nuclear option, as like we really, really do not want to do this, but this is our only option if it gets to 3 weeks. But seriously, like they would rather do anything else than have to cancel the summer split, from my understanding and from obvious analysis of the situation. I know, Andrew, you probably can't comment on like certain stuff with regards to this, but like, I mean, it was a really weird week because we had like such a high and such low lows at different points. Like yesterday, there was the DSG show match, and people were
That
like,
was fun.
"NA is saved," and then like 10 minutes later, we were like, "Wait, I just remembered the situation we're in." Right? Like I don't know. It's just been a bit of a weird week.
I can say like for me, like this is my first time seeing something like this, and I think a lot of people are commenting too. This is the first time in like esports, like a walkout or something like this is happening. So this isn't exclusive to League of Legends. This is like specifically for esports industry, if I'm understanding correctly. And
Yeah.
it's been weird for me because it's like on one hand, like it kind of I've had these conversations with people before. It goes kind of beyond just like typical doomer LCS is dying vibes. And it kind of feels more solid, or it feels different. Like when people talk
Yeah, it
about
doesn't
like
feel
LCS,
like teasing anymore. It feels like people like
yeah,
around the
it
world are
feels
just
like a
like spitting on the
it feels
dead
like
body of the LCS.
it feels like a mindset, or it feels like something solidified. It doesn't feel like ha ha ha, I haven't watched LCS in 5 years. LCS is dying because I'm not watching it, like kind of vibe. So that has been very like discouraging for me a little bit, right? Like as a fan, like to say that like something I love so much, and for not only like esports and league to perceive it, but people like Ludwig, people like Hassan, people like
Most
there's like
Critical talked
multiple
about it. Philip
creators.
DeFranco talked about it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's like
Yeah, it's
multiple
weird.
people like outside of our little League of Legends esports space talking about it, and like hearing it from outside looking in it's kind of, it feels different for me.
Yeah,
Working in org
those
also
felt pretty
feels weird
bad, to be
too.
honest. The coverage of
Like
it felt pretty bad.
I didn't watch a lot of the coverage of it personally. I'm trying to avoid like I'm trying to understand what's going on without like fully jumping in and demoralizing myself a little bit. But
Yeah.
I do want to
The
say that
problem
like
with a lot of the coverage was like, it was, I mean, obviously the people who were covering it, like Lud and Critical and Philip DeFranco, like, they're just getting the surface level perception of like, oh, how's the LCS doing? Oh, LCS is doing bad. Oh, viewership's going down. Oh, this stuff's happening. Okay, so like they always contextualize it like, okay, this dying league, the players are striking, and it's like the the context from people who know LCS and like the framing of that is really different uh, than like people who aren't familiar with it at all, right? Like, I'd say that even people who are like more LEC fans or more LPL fans, whatever, LCK fans, would contend that like, hey, the Players Association advocating for a seat at the table is a good thing, regardless of like, regardless of, you know, if LCS is considered a dying league or like why it's dying. Right? A lot of times in that coverage, it was like, oh, LCS is dying because they're doing bad internationally. It's like, okay, well, for the last 2 years,
I hate that narrative.
well,
Like
It's a
it's, I mean,
terrible
I know
narrative.
we
it
are
also, it's like
doing
not a
bad,
narrative anymore
but it's
because
just
like EU is doing fine. I mean, their viewership's going down, but that's because like post COVID and stuff. EU is doing great, and like their performances internationally have been statistically indistinguishable
Equal.
from NA. Like, I don't know how long EU fans, like, I'm an EU fan, right? I'm straight up an EU fan. I know all the EU players just as well as I know all the NA players. Um, I just don't know how long EU fans can look at international events and go, ah, Mad Lions, they're a fluke. Every time, dude. Mad Lions got there. They got lucky. They're not actually the best team in Europe. They got lucky getting there again, and they're also gonna get destroyed internationally again. It's like if you take out Cap's teams for the last like 5 years, it's EU was like way worse than NA, right? And of course, like Caps is first seed, whatever, right? But like you have to really look at it and be like, yo, if international success was the benchmark, right? Like true international success was the benchmark, then we should be seeing EU like we should be calling EU a dead region for the same reasons.
Holy shit! Wait, I just realized Mad Lions is the double lift of EU.
When they just fail internationally every time.
Yeah, Mad Lions is the double lift of EU.
oh
Makes it to international, fails.
I mean, Mad Lions have never made MSI finals.
True, true.
Double lift greater than Mad Lions. Thoughts?
Real, real. No, I agree. I agree.
Uh, actually, that'll be a really. I actually think 100 Thieves and Mad Lions could be a potential fourth place matchup if for the Worlds qualifying thing, which could be a really fun matchup to watch. Anyways, we're getting off topic. We don't even know if that's gonna happen. But
I believe it's going to happen.
so I think
Hopefully,
the main thing I wanted to say is like I don't see a universe where the LCS is canceled. Because I think that people are really misinterpreting what the LCSPA wants. Like if you read what they're saying and you read why they're walking out, because I mean, okay, Veteran and Dom and Forrest and all these people have kind of brought up these points where they're like, the LCSPA might not be acting in the best interest of the players because look at these demands, they're absurd, right? What are they even negotiating about, right? And I think part of that is it's like, okay, it's fair to make an assumption about what the LCSPA wants based on their demands publicly. That's fair, right? But those are not the demands they're taking into the room. You should be able to identify that instantly because if they go in with those demands, negotiations will never happen. Those negotiations would not be productive if the LCSPA went in like, we need you to pay $3 million every year to the NACL. And Riot's like, no, what? Right? If you read their statements, the thing that they come back to is that the LCSPA was not looped in on talks about how to handle this, and their advice was not taken. In my opinion, what's going to come out of this is a stipend, some sort of probably like a revenue draw. I would like to see some sort of draw from the rev share of teams who dropped their NACL rosters. So like they get slightly less revenue share, and that money goes into the NACL directly, right? So teams that broke their franchising agreement by not having an NACL team, they lose a little bit more rev share, and that money goes to the NACL teams. I think that'd be fine, depending on obviously how much money that is. And then also, I think the main thing that the LCSPA wants, if you read their statements and if you see what Philip Rom talks about on interviews and stuff, is they want a seat at the table. The LCSPA wants people to advocate for players when decisions like this are made. Because straight up, the NACL casters talked about it, the people who were at Riot's talent meeting and Riot's meeting where they talked about how to address the situation this week, people who were there, people who have received this message and who have been working on this problem, all said that, God damn it, if Riot had just made this decision between summer and spring in the actual off season, this would not have happened. The problem was that this decision was made and it screwed over players, and it was not made with the LCSPA at the table. They were cut out of the room. They were cut out of the decision-making process. That's what they're advocating for, right? And I anticipate that's what we're going to see. And I'm saying this part is partially sources and also partially just my understanding from talking to people. But I'm really, really confident that's what's going to come out of this, because honestly, I mean, I think we can all agree, like, Riot is never going to set aside that much money for development, because it just shouldn't be necessary. Like, they're right in that post when they say, like, we shouldn't have to set aside this much money to just, like, sink into the development system. It should be able to grow on its own, especially because it's already supposedly profitable, from what I hear, the NACL, and it's going to get more viewership this year. It kind of makes sense for Riot to not want to sink that money. But I think there is a reasonable solution for this that I think we should see in about a week.
I really hope like for fans, right? Like, I know a lot of fans like stand with players and they're standing with this, but there's also like a side of just like people want to see us, right? Like, in 2 weeks from now, like, the games are gonna happen and like people will get excited again. I don't know how that excitement will feel because of all the events that are happening, but at the end of the day, like, people still watch League of Legends, like North American League of Legends, and people want to get excited, and these
Yep.
conversations like need to happen, and however they happen, we just have to wait and see in the next 2 weeks. But I hope there's some conclusion that comes from it, and I hope that fans can fans are hurt. And I'm not saying I'm gonna like set aside like players and like NA developmental system, right? I'm just gonna set aside that conversation for a bit. But like, as a fan, like, it kind of hurts to watch these conversations, and it hurts to like see all this stuff happen, and you can't really do anything other than absorb. And I feel like as a fan, you always kind of have this passive consumption in a way. But it hurts a little more because it's like it goes beyond like doomer status. It's just like, this is something happening in front of me. Like, what can I do? Like,
Yeah,
anything. Can I do anything
the
Yeah.
at all?
negativity
Like,
around this has been really
I think
depressing.
I think on top of that, because uh for us, the people here, we are like more connected to the scene. So for a lot of this, like, some of these are like people we know losing their jobs, like coaches that like we've interacted with and like speak with all the time, like losing their jobs, or like players that we actually know just finding out that they're not on a team. Like, and that kind of like sucks to see, because like we don't have the power to do anything about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's like an important reason for, like, some people even brought up, like, why are the players even walking out? Like, this is not their problem. NA's dead region anyway. Who cares about NACL? It's like, dude, these are their friends who got their jobs taken away from them in a weekend. Objectively, very unfairly, right? Like, this could have happened after Summer Split, and the loss would have been less because you wouldn't be canceling 2 weeks of the broadcast. You wouldn't be getting all this negative PR, right? And some people are going to be like, well, week 3 of the LCS, when the LCS starts back up, there's going to be so many viewers. And it's like, to a certain extent, true, I guess. Like, yeah, sure. Sure, the LCS will have a lot of viewership of people like, whoa, can't believe it actually, like, worked out. But I don't know if that's, like, the viewers we want, And I think the next thing I wanted to talk about, the next thing I have on the list is, like, is that conversation of, like, how... I mean, we always talk about, like, oh, how dead is the LCS, whatever, but, like, how badly do people misinterpret the value of the NACL? Because I think a lot of people are just ignoring how fucking good the NACL prospects
It's
are and
successful.
have been for the last 2 years.
It's successful. Like, aren't over like half of our current players like about half through the NACL system?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's not an import pretty much came through the NACL system. Like, the academy or NACL system. Like,
we can literally talk about Spring Split, right? You had almost 5 to 7 players promoted either at the beginning or during season. Players such as Tenacity, Busio, Harry,
Harry,
Yon,
Yon,
Spawn.
Tomio,
Like
Spawn,
I want to say at least
Ayla.
7 players were promoted, and not to say that like, not to just be like I know a lot of people are saying developmental league, right? Maybe we shouldn't focus on it, and I do agree like some structural changes needed to be done. I'm not fully aware of the system to comment on what changes needed to be done to make it successful, but you cannot say that like the whole point of a dev league is to kind of like cultivate players, right? To help them develop their skills and help them be ready for professional League of Legends. So to me, like when I see people talk like Dev League and NACL and just like kind of throw it away almost, it's kind of like would you kind of, and I hate making a traditional sports reference, but like would you look at like minor league baseball and say the same thing? Maybe the structure is different, but like at the end of the day, the message of like we want to develop players, we want to
I mean, yeah,
develop
like minor league
skills is
baseball has had a lot
there.
of problems with like exploiting players and like paying them very little. But like, I think the main problem that I had was like they want it both ways, right? Critics of NA want it both ways. They say NA has no talent, right? NA has no raw talent, right? And those people are just stupid, right? So we can just knock those people off. Then there's people who like try to knock it and like play both sides of it because they say, okay, NA fucks over its talent, right? Its talent does not get a proper shot. They look at ERL players and LCKCL players before they even look at NA players, right? But they also say there's no point investing in the NA development system, right? And the way they back up the NA doesn't bother looking at its own talent is they say, look how successful you are when you get players from NA, right? It's like, wow, when you get players like Blabber, Fudge, Tenacity, Busio, right? And I know Tenacity, whatever, right? Like Speak Up, right? A lot of our, I mean, I think Busio has gone really just underappreciated, but like Busio was really
I
fucking
feel
good in
like
spring, which is why I'm
Busi
putting him on this
I
list.
feel like multiple casters, NACL casters said that Busio will be a amazing support player. You give him like
I
a
mean,
couple more splits,
I think
he'll
he
be
was
fine.
top 3 by the end of spring. Like he will come in as a really good player. Like my point being, right? The teams that are the best, yes, they have imports, right? But like the goal is to eventually rely less on imports, and the way you do that is yes, look at the players in academy, right? And they say, dude, NA's so pathetic. Like they let players like Insanity and Copy dominate NACL, and they don't even promote them. It's so bad. This region's gonna die. It's so dead. It's over, right? But then they also say, why are we even bothering to care about NACL? Right? And it's like, well, if we have such good talent coming up, when we're not giving them any chances, right? We're making our talent play such a hard game to get in because they're competing against imports from LCKCL constantly, and they're never given a chance, right? And despite that, there is a really solid, really unassailable argument that like NA has serious talent that has gone ignored consistently, right? So if our talent is this notable, despite having so many roadblocks in their way, then why would we not invest in taking down, like invest in making the development league better, and then also taking down those roadblocks, right? The argument can never be like, oh, don't even bother with the development league. You guys don't use it anyway, right? Because if you say you don't use it anyway and you should, then like we should keep it around. Yes, like yes, I agree that
So
NA teams ignore the talent in their backyard way more than they should. So we should keep that talent around, and as they start to notice that it's there and it's good, we will have things improve, right? Like TL grabbed Harry and Yon and promoted them. EG promoted EG. I know like EG has a lot of controversy and stuff. EG's roster is going to blow people's socks off. People are not going to understand how good like Armeo and Ayla and just this whole roster actually are. Like this roster is genuinely really good, and it's 4 NA players, all 4 of whom came up through the NACL system. Right, Jojopin got promoted last year. This team is going to be way better than what people expect. Um, like
I will say, I will
yeah,
comment too, like if there are fans saying like, "Oh, we don't care about any talent," like if we want to transition to this aspect, if you look at the show match between Delta Fox and Disguised Toast NACL team or DSG, like you had on that roster, they announced Young, who was a former Golden Guardians NACL player, now with like Toast. They have like Meech, like a former CLG, now NRG player, and
You have
like
Tomio,
you have Tomio, like,
former
who was a
EG,
jungler
former
on C9
C9.
Challengers who won. Like, you have this young talent, like, it is in front of you, right? Like, if you want fans want to just be like, oh, we don't really care about NA talent. NA's not good. Like, you want to look at NA talent? Look at what's happening with Disguised Toast team, right?
Yeah, I think
Like,
DSG is a really good
it
example of
exists. It exists.
like no, I mean there's talent. There's I mean all of NACL basically is NA talent, and like I think the argument that you're making is like people who watch the NACL know that all of those players deserve like an LCS shot next year, realistically, right? All those players, you can make an easy argument that they are LCS caliber next year. And there's even conversation like this team is arguably a super team, right? Like if this team were to play an LCS all year with LCS level infrastructure, like how good would they actually be? Right? And like if that's a conversation you can have, you are not actively using the NACL as much as you should. Right? And the question is like how long until teams realize that that is a serious advantage for them? That like using talent from the NACL is a serious advantage, because as much as they say like as much as Cloud9 comes out and says we love developing talent, right? Do they though? Right? Like I love the C9 roster. I love the C9 roster. But like dropped your NACL team, it always feels like the NA players on C9 teams are supplementing, are just the best you can get, but like always trying to shove as many imports into the team as possible. Right? Which like sure, maybe that's the way to win. I don't know. But like it shouldn't be, because there's a lot of NA talent who is really good that then goes ignored with this method, right? And if you're arguing that you love development and you love promoting players and you love, playing the best people, then like if that was true and if every org believed this that said it, we would have better players in the LCS. We do. We would not have the NACL just ignore a lot of its best players constantly. I don't know. I think we've talked about that a lot before too. It's just really, that's a hard outlook, like looking out into the future and being like, will this ever get better?
I think too, like part of being a fan, right? Like I try to promote positivity even if it feels like esports or at least League of Legends fandom isn't trying to be positive right now. Like
Never. I feel like they're never trying to be positive.
I feel like I'm not trying to be delusional or not trying to
It's
like
just
not
a
see
League
what's
of
in front
Legends
of me,
thing.
right? Like
League of Legends
it's not
players.
that. I'm just trying to say is just like whatever happens in the next 2 weeks, whatever outcome comes out of it, like a decision will be made, and like it's like how you react to it, right? Like there's only so much you can do other than just like your reaction, and like for me, like I want to try to promote like the positive things about the scene, right? I know it's like crashing and like there's not really a lot to be positive about, but what I can say is just like something will come out of this decision, and like I'm not gonna be dramatic and be like the world's gonna change, but just like something will come out and hopefully we can feel a sigh of relief, or at least like let go of all this pressure that I don't I speak for myself when I say this. I feel like this weighted pressure of like all the stuff that's been happening, and it has been very consuming for me this week, to a point where I'm like I'm just gonna step away and stop like scrolling on Twitter, right? Because for me, like I want to still love the scene, and I still very much do, and I will still do everything I can to promote it. It's just really hard right now when a lot of fans or like a lot of people are just repeating the same negative
Yeah,
sentiment,
looking
and
for a
that's
reason to be edgy or angry. It's just really
and
just really cringe.
we've talked about this before, right? I'm not telling people to not look at reality or what's in front of us, but I am saying like if you are a fan, like think about what you're saying into the void and how that affects other people, right? I don't think people realize, like, especially in our Twitter, Discord, like Reddit, like space that we have, how like I don't know if you can hear that, but like how much your voice like affects other people. Because if you think about it, that chain reaction of whatever you say, someone parrots it and then it keeps going. Like that's why it feels so weighted for me because it's not just like the typical people saying stuff like this. It's just like everyone
Yeah,
saying
it's
like
it's people who are
league
normally
is
pretty
dying.
positive, and they're like, it's not even because it used to be like this thing of like, damn, is LCS just dead? Like, what happened to this league that I love? It turned into, even from people who like are I really like and seen, a thing of like, damn, so what are we gonna do now that LCS is dead? Right? And that sort of thing of like dealing with it as a bygone conclusion, it just
Like
makes
why
it
are
feel
you
like people were
frustrated?
just
Like it hasn't even started. Like nothing has been made. We're still in limbo for 2 weeks. Like why are we saying this shit? Like stop it. Stop it.
I don't know. I think maybe like the optimistic perspective is like, oh, people got overly negative because of like, also you're lagging like crazy, by the way, Angie. Um, people got like overly negative because of how bad the bad it felt to see that post, and like, they were really on the player's side, and they were like, well, throw our hands up in the air. It's Jover now, right? Like maybe, but it just kind of feels like as you're watching it happen that um people were just waiting for an opportunity to like prove that the LCS is dead.
I mean, I think that that's just like a League of Legends and LCS like Reddit and then like part of Twitter type thing. Like everyone everyone is just so negative and like trying to find something to antagonize, and like you can see that like very easily with like most prominent figures in the league space, not just
Who could
LCS
you
or
mean? Who
I'm
could
not gonna name
you?
names, but like
It could be anyone. You're saying there's
but
big league creators who are like really
but
negative and
many
commenting on the
prominent
situation?
figures,
Dude,
whether
it's
whether they be
crazy.
involved in the
I thought
esports space or
I
not.
really thought like when people like um Thorin or Dom and all these people, and specifically like Thorin, Dom, like that whole circle, when they like tweet stuff and when they say things about the situation, I really thought they'd like know what they're talking about. But like it, I just don't see that. Like it just doesn't, like, now that I know what's happening behind the scenes, there's stuff that I hear, and I hear what, like, I literally know. I knew when Riot made this decision. I know why they made this decision. I heard about all this stuff. I'm talking to people in the scene at orgs and like how they're feeling, and then I see conclusions drawn by people who don't look into it at all, right? I'm like, they'll be like, oh yeah, people at orgs are just getting ready to like pack it up. Like they know LCS is dead. All the orgs are looking to sell. I'm like, do you speak to anyone at orgs, man? Like what? Right? Like they're like, oh yeah, no, dude, no one even wants the spot for TSM. Like no one's even buying their slot. They're selling it for like $2 million. Like no one's even buying it. I'm like, dude, it's just not true. Like it's just like it feels like the narrative that was being spun got so big that everyone's just taking it as fact. And they're like, they've just like accepted it. And they're like, yeah, no, everyone knows that like every person in the LCS is an import. Literally every player is an import. There's actually no native players anymore in the
Yeah, you know
LCS.
Jojo from this place called Canada.
Yeah,
Like
no, there's
that's not
there's
Never heard of
America.
it
That's not
actually.
NA. The fuck?
yeah, no, there's not there's no more like this just complete revisionist history as if like they're like, yeah, no, LCS hasn't had good stories in years. And I'm like, did you watch 2022 spring finals? It's been a year, man. It's been 1 year since probably the greatest story that NA's had in like a decade. Literally, I think there was what, like the CLG, TSM, MSG, that legendary run for Double Lift or whatever, and then also the EG run. And I know EG's become tainted, and Danny's departure was like really, really a big blow to the scene, because I really think that if Danny was still playing and that story was still around, you'd have a lot more fans of the LCS and a lot of people really loving it. But like the idea that like, oh well, that EG fumbled the bag on that story, and that was a once in a blue moon thing. That'll never happen again. There's no more talent like Jojo or Danny. No one else ever looked good in NACL or an academy like Jojo did. It's like, it's just not true. There are other players who are this good. There are other opportunities to have stories like that, right? To have players come up and really get fans attached to them. Because like I love Speaka, I love Blabber, I love Fudge, But those have been the players. I love Vulcan. Sorry, Vulcan too, right? Those are the players that fans have been attached to. It's 4 players. Those are the players that fans really like. And now Berserker has been around for over a year. People are getting attached to him. But, like, the players that fans really love, right? Like, players that just, like, get everyone excited, right? Are players like Danny and JoJo, right? Like, that's why they accomplish that. Because they come in, they're young, they're NA players, and everyone sees, oh my god, they're, like, doing it. Right? It's like, it's cool when Blabber wins, but Blabber's got Berserker on his team. You know what I mean? Blabber's got M&S on his team. Like, it's harder for fans to connect to that. It makes sense why there are other narratives that people think are cool and they want to be attached to certain players that are from NA. It makes sense, right? And I like a lot of our imported players. I think we make great stories around them. But, like, I mean, seriously, it just makes me so mad when that implication is made, as if, like, Immortals, let's say, for example, Immortals or Dig or any team that's, like, struggling, TSM even, right? Like, TSM is selling, right? And they've got their roster of Haunter and Wild Turtle and everyone, right? And they're playing Ruby once he comes, but they've got Insanity for now, right? I don't get how in a position like that, and I kind of get it, right? It's contracts and stuff, but, like, I feel like you just pick up the number 1 NACL squad and you just say, let's go, right? I don't know. It's just so, it's actually raising my blood pressure just thinking about people who are like, nah, NACL is never going to be useful. None of those players are good. It's like, dude, watch the league. You don't watch the league. I don't know. Makes me sad.
I think like
Yeah.
someone in our Twitch chat. So please, you should, if you're an audio listener as well, we stream this live on Twitch. We're doing it Friday today because we're actually going to College League of Legends. So we're going to CLOL this weekend.
Collegiate.
Me, Arsh at least.
I'm
CLOL
not, 'cause I'm too
semis.
far, and I have school.
CLOL semis and finals. They
Yeah.
That's gonna be a banger, by the way. I think our next episode will be about CLOL and all that. We might have some guests on. Some guests.
But
on to
I
talk
do want
about
to highlight. I do want to wait. Hold on. But I do want to highlight one of the comments saying that, like, I do think negative sentiment is okay as long as there needs to be some changes to our development, not doper negative and criticism. And I think a lot of people. I'm not gonna hone on this point because we've already talked about this, but I think people are confusing. Excuse me. I think people are using criticism to do negativity or doomerism, and I would urge you as a fan to be open, honest with your feedback, and I've said this from the beginning. Open with your feedback with organizations, brands, and this isn't just limited to esports. Like, I see this in other spaces as well. But there's a difference between giving criticism and there's a difference between bashing. And I would argue a lot before you press hit tweet to that poor social media manager who is not doing well, or at least like has to see all of this like.
We don't know who she's talking about. It could be anyone.
It's been me before. It's
I
been
would
me
argue
many
that before
times.
you press hit tweet or before you send a DM to an organization to reread your message
Or
at
even a
least 2
Riot.
times.
Riot has social media managers too. There
are humans behind accounts. I think there's criticism. Criticism is encouraged. I don't think bashing is ever encouraged. There's a human behind the accounts that you interact with, and especially in our esports space, you can interact with those humans. Like, you can interact with players, you can interact with staff, and I think that's a very interesting commodity that you don't see in other industries. Esports is a place where, as a fan, you can feel connected to your brand or player. But I would argue that criticism is necessary. Bashing is not. So before you press hit tweet, look at that tweet again. And if you don't have Twitter Blue, you should reread your tweet before you send that to the poor social media manager.
If you do
And
a
that's
Twitter
kind
Blue,
of
you
why
shouldn't reread it.
you have the delay function on Twitter Blue.
Oh, you
and
can also edit. I see this, but yeah. But I don't know.
I bought Twitter Blue like 3 weeks ago, and I've been made fun of. I'm just testing it out, honestly.
I don't know. I think that criticism by nature comes from caring about the thing you're criticizing. Right? Like, if I'm criticizing something, I have to care enough to criticize it. Right? Like, otherwise I wouldn't criticize it. right? Or I wouldn't give that criticism to the person. To give a person criticism, give a broadcast or a league criticism, implies that you care about it, right? You care about this criticism, you care about this product, whatever. And I think you're right. I think a lot of this is bashing. It's just a lot of people who don't watch LCS, haven't for years, maybe never did, who are just like pulling on, because like seriously, there were serious NA positivity like threads even on Reddit, right? Like Reddit was genuinely positive about the LCS for a while, right? But there's all these people who like kind of watch LCS or didn't watch LCS since like 2015, and they're like, dude, all they know about the LCS is the region sucks, imports are everywhere, and nobody cares about anything, and the region's dying, and no one watches, and no one likes it. So they see no reason to just not bash it, right? Because they're in their mind, there's nobody cares about this league. Everyone agrees with them that the league is dead. There's no recourse. There's no talent. The casters suck. The talent sucks. Players suck. Everyone sucks. Everyone's bad. Easy. Done. Evil. Right? It's really easy to just be like, it sucks. Woo! And I feel like because that is so much of the league community, and that's just their instincts with stuff, they've just been doing that over and over and over. And it's like, how is this productive? Like, do you seriously believe that, like, that's helpful, or that's like a good addition to the conversation? Or do you even like really believe that like this is like gonna kill the LCS? Because like honestly, if moving to weekdays didn't kill the LCS, then this is not gonna do that. Like seriously, if moving to weekdays at 2 p.m. did not kill the LCS, then I think we're probably fine. Right? Like I don't see there being that much of a problem. I don't know. I'm sort of jaded by this whole thing, and like it sort of feels worse long-term outlook, but also I feel pretty hopeful that like things are gonna be fine, because it just seems, I don't know, it seems like, or I know, right? I know that everyone on both sides of this loves LCS, loves the product, and does not want it to be canceled or like, you know, not have the best of development, right? Like people will believe that like, oh, Riot doesn't care, right? But it's in Riot's best interest. Honestly, I'm gonna be completely real with you. It is in Riot's best interest for NA to be good. It would be so good for Riot if NA was good, because it is way, way harder to set esports as a defining cultural change, right? Like right now, esports is in this weird thing where it's no longer a niche, right? People have heard of esports. People kind of know what it is. But now esports needs to establish itself. It needs to be a real thing. And America is a culture setter for like most of the world, right? If esports becomes normalized here, if it could become normalized here, that would be amazing, because it's going to give Riot so much money. Like they're going to get just absolutely rolling in cash, right? And that can't really happen when your flagship game, the biggest esport in the world, NA sucks at, right? Riot would really, really love for NA to not suck at League. But like objectively, right now, LCS teams go internationally and they suck. But pragmatically, right, all capitalism is where does the money go? For Riot, it is a lot more lucrative if the LCS is good at League of Legends, right? And if you believe that, right, I think there's people who believe that Riot doesn't have LCS's best interests at heart. From speaking to people there and like seeing how they're handling this, I think the Scab LCS stuff was a rash decision made by certain people who do not work like with the product as much as like other people would be making the decision, say if like Jackie was still around. Like I think that sort of soured people's taste of like, oh, Riot's not actually looking out for the best in the LCS. But I think that with the negotiation talks happening right now, with what I'm hearing, I believe that Riot has the best interest of the LCS at heart, partially because they have to. If Riot doesn't have the best interest of the LCS at heart, it doesn't matter, right? And I think that players obviously do, and orgs usually do. Some orgs maybe don't have the best interest of the LCS at heart, but luckily those orgs may not be around much longer. You know, certain orgs can go to get ready to learn Chinese, buddy. You know, like
solo Mandarin.
Certain teams don't have the best interest of the LCS at heart, and that's okay, right? But at the end of the day, I have to believe that like and I do believe, right, like, because what I hear and what I know, that these are productive conversations and things will improve because it is advantageous for everyone to pitch in and make this work, right? And it's like, okay, if orgs, I don't know, like if orgs are like, fuck it, we'll take the next 2 years and we'll just be absolute complete shit at international events, but we're gonna have one import per team, right? And it's like, that's never gonna happen. But like, you be non-competitive for like a year or two at international events, but the ethos of the region would increase so much, right? It's like, do something, right? And it feels right now, from what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, that orgs, players, and teams are trying to do something. There's new content coming out. Players are really trying. Prince is tweeting like a fucking Twitter superstar. He's now united with Vulcan.
My goat.
Actually, the 3 biggest Twitter addicts in the LCS are now on the same team, by the way. We haven't talked about this.
Yeah, no, it's crazy.
But like, Spica, Vulcan, and Prince all being on the same team is
Prince
too
has
much
2
Twitter
ghost
power.
copywriters now.
Huh?
He has 2 ghost copywriters.
True. That's actually
insane.
so true. It's just Vulcan. It's just Vulcan and Spica battling over who gets to tweet on Prince's.
Yeah, Vulcan can fact check Spica's tweets, and Spica can fact check Vulcan's tweet, all going on Prince's account.
You know, like that is what creates. That's what creates fans, right? Players who are fun, players who are interesting. I feel like the advantage that Valorant has is that it has a lot of this like drama between all its players, and all its players stream.
Oh, the drama is so funny.
Right?
It's so
It's
funny.
like maybe we get some LCS drama in there. You know what I mean? Like get some, like do something, like kill someone's cat. You know what I mean? Like
when the
flamed.
Sven Yon thing happened, like
Yeah,
the Sven
it's some
Yon,
real
Sven Yon
anger.
thing,
Yeah.
that was funny. Or like not like that was like drama in the sense where it's like,
Yeah, I
oh,
prefer if
as
the
a
drama was
spectator,
less one-sided. You know what I mean? Like I didn't
Yeah.
love like the Ayla Vulcan thing where it just felt
I
like
didn't
Vulcan
like that
was
either.
Vulcan was like, yeah, you're shit, and Ayla was like, dude, you know, like this young player just
Sven
kind
Yon
of getting
thing was like,
targeted.
it was
I'd rather
oh, it gives me a reason
I'd rather
to
see
care.
like shit talk between like Spica and Blabber. You know what I mean? Where it's like 2 of the best NA junglers we've had in the last 5 years, right? And they're like I want to see them have drama. You know what I mean? Or I want to see them like, I don't know. I want to see these players stream more and do more. And like I'm looking over right now, Berserker streaming, right? Like these players are genuinely doing what we asked them to a year ago, and what fans have been asking for. So it's like, if you're gonna already be like, oh, LCS is dead, you're acting like the last year of good stuff hasn't happened, and that doesn't make any sense to me. Like you're just ignoring like a year of like actually good improvements and all these good things. It's like, why would you still cling on to this LCS is dead like tree like it's your life raft? You know what I mean? Like why?
Like, I kind of have that mentality of like with like all those haters where it's like, you don't care about the LCS, then leave. Like
Yeah, then
there are
why are
people
you
that do
talking
care.
about it, man?
Yeah,
Like,
well,
why?
yeah, exactly. There are people that do care. There are people that do watch. Like the players still give a fuck. Riot has to give a fuck. The teams have to give a fuck. Like, why are you still here if you don't care? As a fan, like,
And that's kind of like what I'm kind of coming out and saying is just like the next 2 weeks while waiting for a decision, if whatever happens, like it will be a sigh of relief, but also we'll probably see fans, in my opinion, just be like, like I don't care anymore. I'm gonna leave. Or you see fans like, you know what, like this is what we have and this is what we have to take, right? I think people are always saying there's a new generation of fans coming in. And like for me, it's just like
There's a new
if you don't
DSG
like watching
generation of
me,
fans coming in, dude.
let's go toast.
there is a content creator
Actually,
in NACL that's really interesting right now. Like, there's new content, always new content going on. There's like orgs are like a specific org is leaving in the next split. Like, I don't know who will replace that spot or what that would look like,
I'm
but
gonna say it now just because it's gonna be a really great clip. I think at least 2 orgs are leaving, at least, and their spots are both gonna be sold for I think
at the end
15
of
to
summer
25.
split.
Huh?
Are you saying at the end of summer
Yeah,
split?
at the end of
that's
summer.
gonna
I think next spring we're gonna have 2 new orgs. At
So
least.
what orgs do you think other than TSM? Because TSM obviously announced it.
I don't know. We will have to see. I don't want to say it on this
That's not a
podcast
clip.
because
That's not a
it
clip.
might
How are
be
you trying to
mean.
get
It's not a clip. It's not a clip. If it's not a
That's
clip,
not
if
a
you don't
clip.
say
That's
yeah,
not
if
a
you don't
clip.
say who you think it is.
I'm gonna tweet about it by the end of summer, I think. But I think
Bro, this guy's just trying to up his engagement, not up our engagement. He
Okay.
cares about his own Twitter, not
both
NAmen's.
of you know exactly which org I'm talking about, and you know exactly
I
why.
don't. because
But
I'm
okay,
focused on trying to make LCS great.
We're
I have
coming
an
up.
Or at least
idea.
We're coming
I
up
have
on
an
an
idea,
hour.
but
We're coming up on our hour. Yeah, John has a little hint. I don't know why John would. Okay, so we're coming out on an hour, and this episode kind of went everywhere, but I don't know. I hope that people tune in for week 1 of LCS. I think it's gonna be really fun. I hope we get to make content. We get to have a really good time. It's really easy to feel like, dude, LCS. It's really easy to let it like get to me because I'm like, damn, maybe LCS is boring. Like I watch back old Scara clips and stuff, and I'm like, dude, this guy was so fire. Like I watched back the clip where he's like up until they're losing, they're winning or whatever.
that's
Up until they
iconic.
lose the game, they're winning.
I love that clip.
I watched the whole interview. None of our players interview like that anymore. And I know Scar like went on to become a really famous streamer and stuff because he's so good on camera. But like, I was like, dude, maybe our players just suck. Maybe we don't have good content and stuff. And then I think about it and I'm like, well, we had catching up with Double Lift, and we had like Draw My Life.
Catching Up with Double Lift is so good. I
It's a
love this
great show.
segment.
It's
and
great.
I'm not even a fan of cringe humor. It makes me feel really uncomfortable, but that segment is so
Yeah,
good. Like
I also
whoever
normally
pitched that,
really uncomfortable
thank
with it.
you.
Like
Mark
we had
did a
the
great job
Speak
hosting it.
Cooking with Cutie Cinderella thing, right? Like it's like genuinely had good content, genuinely had people like getting interested. And also I was expecting the viewership to dip under 100K, right? I can't prove this, but like the fact that viewership only dipped like 5K average, right? And people would say the finals peak was way lower, but also it was Golden Guardians playing and everyone knew they were going to get 3-0'd. So there wasn't a lot of interest in watching the games. But like 110K versus like 120K average last year, when you switch to weekdays at 2 p.m. for all your best games taking place at 2 p.m. PSD, that feels like that was like a positive thing. That we saw that as a positive thing in spring. People were like, yeah, this is way better than it should have been, objectively speaking. But those kind of, I don't know, it's just easier to remember the negative shit. And yeah, there's a lot of people in chat are talking about like changes that can happen, like salary cap, right? And the only way a salary cap can happen is if there is a collective bargaining agreement in the LCS, which I think would be pretty good. I think changes to revenue share, changes to relegation would be really good. Relegation won't change unless Riot buys back franchising or partially buys it back. Riot, if you're looking for suggestions of how to change the franchising system, I am here and unemployed, so I can work on that for you 100%. I will do it. I will come up with like 100 plans.
For money.
Dude, I'll do it for free, man. Just like give me credit. Like tag me into the tweet.
No, get paid for your work.
But like I don't know. There's ways, right? Like partially buy back some slots. TSM and unnamed org sell their slots this year. Have Riot buy them, and make them promo relegation spots instead of another org buying them. Like do something. Just do anything. Because while I might believe that like things are better than people think, I'm not the one that people have to be. I'm not the one that has to be convinced, right? And that's sort of my thing. I don't know. I've been talking so much this episode just because I was gonna write an article about this, and Diablo 4 took up all my time. But yeah, that's it for me.
Bro said, "Fuck the article. I'm gaming."
Numiii, where can people find you?
You can find me at the typical handle NUMIII. I'm Numiii Goes Rars on Twitch, so if you ever see me in a stream, it is me. It's just an old.
Oh my god, is it Numiii Goes
Someone
Rars?
asked me this today. It's just like, do you go? Oh, it was Pew times 2 or something. It was just like, do you go Rars on birthdays? I'm like, Jesus Christ, guys. Like, but I've considered this stuff as like therapy for me in a way, just like a way to let out like this pressured weight I have, and honestly, like as a fan, just support however you choose to support and reread your tweets before you send them to the social media manager. That is
Or
what I
just stop
really
tweeting.
deal
I think
with.
Twitter's bad
Yeah.
for you objectively.
Just
Yeah.
stop. Actually, just stop tweeting in general.
Dude,
I need
I've
to stop tweeting as well. I need to
You know,
get
it's
off
I
pretty
keep
Twitter
getting
and
so many
enjoy the
interactions on my
like,
tweets about NACL that I'm like, oh, I should tweet about this new piece of news, or like I should
mean,
like talk about this.
I don't.
You
I
guys
just
should tweet less. You
really
guys should tweet less. I think you guys definitely
I
tweet way
need
too
to tweet.
much. You guys definitely.
I'm going out after this. Like,
You
I'm
guys
trying to
definitely tweet
enjoy.
way too much.
I
Anyway,
just
speaking of my
moved to
Twitter, find me on
LA. I'm trying to enjoy.
Arshroyal13 if you're one of the 3 people who listens to this podcast and hears me on like all the episodes and goes, he's finally not annoying enough. I'll follow him. Like you change your opinion now. John, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on John the Ho on most things, John the Ho 64 on Twitter, where I tweet sometimes. I'm not as social media addicted as these two, even though currently my job is social media.
Yeah,
I think that's
you're
why.
legally addicted to social
I
media.
think I think that's why I don't go on it as much and post on it as much in my free time. Uh, Wanted a quick shout out to Toast for doing a lot of stuff for
Dude,
the
that guy's
NACL
so
and league scene
nice.
already.
I've talked to him about
In
his
the
team and everything. He's
Yeah,
so nice. He cares
he's
so much about League.
it's great.
That guy's so good. So fucking
I've been
nice.
watching him since he was a Hearthstone streamer. So keep it up,
That
Toast.
guy's great. Shout out Toast.
Shout out Toast,
Shout out Toast. Uh, in
my
case you guys
second
haven't
favorite
heard of
streamer.
Disguised Toast, shout him out. Okay, thank you guys. Tune in next week. We're probably gonna be talking about CLOL and all that stuff. Unless something crazy happens, unless something even crazier than this happens, like I don't know, LEC and LCS become one region, then we'll be talking about that.
Oh,
But
no.
CLOL probably is the plan for next week.